All right, welcome to Cooking with Cardboard. My name is Ben,
And I'm Martin.
and you can find us over on Twitter at cardboard_cooks.
Or you can find me at golem_MTG. You can also find us on YouTube at Cooking with Cardboard. This week, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite cards from the year and some cards that you might have missed.
Yeah, ones that might have flown under the radar.
Exactly, yeah. Sneaky cards.
All right, first up, one of my cards that I'm most excited about from this year is a Nuka Pina card. So we have Luxior. I don't really know how to say the first word. It's Giada's Gift, though. It costs one colorless, and it's in a legendary artifact equipment. It has a Planeswalker 1 and a normal equip for 3 colorless. It has equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it, and equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. Loyalty abilities can still be activated. So I know there was a lot of hype around this card when it first came out, and people were kind of excited to put this on some planeswalkers. I think it's one of those cards that has like a really weird interaction with planeswalkers where they're going to have to think about this every time they print a planeswalker going forward, which I don't really trust Wizards. I think they're not going to look at it that hard, and I think it's going to be broken fairly easy. It also has a lot of cool synergies with any kind of counter. It doesn't specifically say +1/+1 counter or like just loyalty counters, which it kind of broadens that range of, it's going to be really viable in a lot of different strategies.
Yeah, I like that it's also tutorable with the probably best land printed in the last several years, the Urza's Saga.
Oh yeah, that's
So
one.
this can pull that up, which is pretty cool. It's also could be tutored with like Trinket Mage if that's relevant. It's just a way to get redundancy to find it. So if you want to build around this card, you can build around it. You don't have to just hope you draw it. I mean, you can make it more consistent than that. I just love that you can't attack the Planeswalker.
Yeah, right. Like you can't declare
This
it.
makes
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns on creature removal, but anymore, a lot of the creature removal printed is gonna be target creature or planeswalker. So I don't know. In the years to come, it probably won't make it any different really that way. But you can turn it into a beater. I like the idea of attacking with Tasha. From Baldur's Gate, stealing your cards, and I'm swinging in on my lady.
100%. Plus, it's like you play it for one and you equip it for one. It's not like it costs an arm and a leg.
Yeah. Very low investment there. Very low
Yeah.
investment. Awesome. Next up, one of my favorites, and one that I think a lot of people are still sleeping on, is the Restoration of Iganjo. It's a white and 2 colorless for a Saga enchantment. Its first lore counter gets you search your library for basic planes, put it in your hand. Second one says you can discard any card, and when you do, return target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. So could get that same planes. If you discard the planes, you could get that. And then the third step is exile this Saga and return it to the battlefield transformed.
What does it come back transformed
And
as?
the Architect of
Look at
Restoration.
him.
This is Fox Monk 3/4. It's got vigilance, and whenever it attacks or blocks, you create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. Kind of plays like Briamaz, right? But the reason I really like this card is this is consistent white mana ramp that in the late game still does things. So you could imagine 3 mana is a bit much for mana ramp if you think Farseek is 2. A lot of the signets are 2.
Sure.
So 3 mana is a bit much, but the versatility I think of this card makes it way better than people give it credit. So you think early game, you search for a plains, you discard plains, you put it back into play tap, so it's 3 mana to get 1 land. That turns into a 3/4 creature that can be relevant. And then if you think about it from another way, late game, you can be like, well, actually, I'm going to discard this 1 card and I'm going to get back my Skull Clamp. Right? So your Skull Clamp, you can then start sacking the spirit tokens to draw cards, or it just gives you so much late game engine for such a little investment, both card wise and mana value.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one?
I love it. I love sagas. I think they're a lot of fun. I think the body's useful. It's an enchantment creature, so maybe that's important for you. It still counts as an enchantment unit when it flips. And like you said, making fodder, it's nothing to like discount. It's pretty useful. I mean, it's not huge. It does have vigilance. That's nice. I don't know. I like it. I think
Yeah.
that sagas are definitely like one of those cards you can always play around with, and people will. People don't really ask very often with like what the sagas do exactly because they don't care. They don't see it as a threat. Whereas like a lot of planeswalkers or like
Yeah.
heavy creatures are like, oh, I know that one, or like what does that one do? I play sagas sometimes and they fly way under the radar. So
Well, one of the things, looking at the numbers from EDH Rec, Restoration of Eiganjo currently shows up in less than 10,000 decks total,
wow,
which sounds like a lot. And it is a fair amount for a card, right? So it's definitely getting some love. But if you compare it to Knight of the White Orchid, that has 64,000 decks. And I would say that they're pretty close to on par since Knight of the White Orchid is not consistent ramp. It's very
like
conditional.
catch up.
While this is,
Yeah,
yeah. So I feel like it should be in a lot more than 10,000 decks. You have to think that one of the most popular white cards is Sun Titan, which is played in 141,000 decks, like insane numbers. Almost every white deck. This card actually seems to play really well with Sun Titan. Sun Titan can get this saga back from the graveyard, but this saga is getting back a 2-drop while of any kind versus Sun Titan getting back a 3-drop. Not a big bar there. I mean, less mana, of course, and it's not recurring like Sun Titan is. You can do it over and over again every attack. But for 3 mana, I just feel like this card is being slept on.
for sure, for sure. It seems like a really good pickup. All right, next up we have a little halfling buddy here. We have Archivist of Ogma. Ogma? We'll think about that one. He costs 1 colorless and 1 white pip. He's a halfling cleric, 2/2. He has flash, and whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Love it. It has flash in white, super fun. The amount of cards you're going to draw off it is going to vary depending on the power level that you're playing against and the colors that you're playing in the pot against. Some colors like to search their library more than others. Same with power levels, where you have a lot of people tutoring or playing fetch lands. You're going to get a lot of advantage off of it. But at its worst, it's just a 2/2 with flash that you play at instant speed. You're safe against board wipes. You're going to be able to swing with him on your turn. He's a halfling cleric, so it does have some synergies in those party decks that are trying to assemble the full party. So it's got a little flavor there. And honestly, I mean, it's one of the themes of this year kind of is giving white just cracked card draw. It's really good. And I know this one's a little pricey, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the best cards from that set. I feel like this card is definitely like a CDH staple, right? In white, it's
fair.
pretty insane, strong value in a format where people are tutoring multiple times a game each. It's also really good at casual tables with lots of green players. So anytime people are trying to ramp, they are drawing you a card, and it's got life gain on it, which means it can also synergize with life gain decks. I mean, there's a lot to like about this card.
Yeah.
And the floor, 2 mana, 2/2 is pretty low, but you could realistically make this card really strong in a deck where you are doing group hug shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
So you could see like using the
Like Tip with Discovery or like any sort of
exactly.
card like
So
that.
people
Yeah.
can search your library. You could also do like the symmetrical scheming symmetry,
Oh yeah, that's another
which
good
is
one.
it's the Imperial Seal where you let somebody else also tutor.
Twinsies,
So I
yeah.
mean, makes those cards interesting. I mean, it's definitely a fun card to play around, and it, like you said, if you're at a lower power table, most people aren't going to be like, "Oh, you're bringing a CDH card in here." Oh, because
100%.
it's going to scale in power level.
It does a great job scaling for sure.
Next up for me is Unlucky Witness. It's a 1 red mana human citizen 1/1, and it says when Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until your next end step, you may play one of those cards. This card is not winning any awards for flashiness. This card is pretty modest. but criminally underplayed. I'm showing this one shows up in only 1,000 decks
Oh
and
wow.
all of EDH Rec. Yeah. And like less than 1% of the red based aristocrat decks. And I think this should be in every red based aristocrat deck. The fact that you can sack it during somebody else's turn and you have those cards until the end of your next turn is, I think, very, very strong. Low mana investment, relevant tribe and human. This is just, as an aristocrats player, this is one of the cards that I was just most stoked about coming out of New Capenna. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one seems really good. It also has that play from exile if you care about that. It's got a lot of, I don't know, in the art, like it's pretty sweet art. The little guy in the background, you see his eyes. I like it a lot. Plus, it's I'm trying to think a lot of early red decks. And maybe this is just me personally. Lately, I've been seeing those mono red decks fail to hit their land drops. So like this is very flexible, right? You can play. So you, if you hit a land and you need a land, you can play it. I didn't even think about that instant speed interaction though. Like you were saying, you could get a full 2 turn rotations basically on somebody else's turn. That's a really interesting. That's probably why a lot of people are sleeping on it because I didn't even read it like that. That's pretty cool.
I think it's just one of those things that's not flashy, so people are sleeping on it. And as more people see it played, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I really should put that into my red-black deck." You know, that's aristocrats. I mean, one I'm thinking of is the red, black, and a colorless for a 3/3. It's like a cat person. It says at the end of your turn, if a creature you create a treasure for each creature that died that turn.
Oh yeah, he looks like this. He's like kind of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I forget what his name is.
So I feel like that should be in that deck, and it's in less than 1% of those decks, and that's just insane to me. I really like creatures that are very low mana investment that give you value on death for those decks. It's their bread and butter, and this is just a great effect.
For sure, really good. Good include. All right, next up for me, we've got an interesting card, a background, a new, what's the word, like type line that was introduced this year. It is Noble Heritage for 1 colorless and a white. It is a legendary enchantment background, and it has creatures you own have, when this creature enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2+1/+1 counters on it on a creature they control. For each opponent who does this, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. So this is like a really fun politics card. It also does one of the best things in EDH is it creates a conversation at the table, which it's forced, right? At your upkeep, you're gonna have, and you control your commander. You're gonna have to say, "Hey guys, like, does anybody want to put counters on their stuff? I'll gain protection from you." And they get to you know maybe talk to the other players or go through their own board and say, "Okay, does that value me? Like, what do I get out of it?" It kind of creates those political situations without like jacking up the power level. I really think that Wizards did a great job with backgrounds as a whole, making so that they're fun to play with, but they're not broken and like giving you some unfair advantage from the command zone. What do you think, Martin? Do you like backgrounds? Do you like this card? Do you like Baldur's Gate?
I do like. I like backgrounds. Baldur's Gate is a kind of a weird set.
Yeah, for sure.
There's 2 things going on there that I think made Baldur's Gate not a huge success coming out the gates. One of those things is they cut down pack size, and the way they did, not the actual pack size of the packs, but the number of packs in a box. They did that for both the set boosters, the draft packs, the pre-release. I think collector's boosters stay the same. And then the other thing is they had all these different rares per pack, which is how they justified it. But the problem is that a lot of the chase cards were not legendary, so they didn't go in a lot of the extra rare slots. So your dual lands, your ancient dragons, they didn't show up in these extra slots, so you really weren't getting more packs. You just got more of these rares, which had their own rarity, like the background enchantments and legendary creatures and things, right? So that was one problem. The other problem with it is they used the word commanders legends, right? So that was tied to the old one, which had lots of strong reprints, very high power level. It had new cards that were like pushed CEDH cards. So you're coming off the back of the last set being so loved because of those high power and reprints, and then this next one doesn't have that power level, doesn't have those reprints. It's kind of a feel bad. But because of that,
Sure.
there's a lot of great cards in this set that are being overlooked, and I 100% agree with that. But this one's cool. I don't know if I like it for my style. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are you using this as a background commander, or are you using this in your 99?
That's a great question. I mean, I find it really cool when I see people play backgrounds and they stick to the monocolored build. Like they pick a white commander like the elephant to go with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could also play this. I mean, it's only 2 mana. You could play this in the 99, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not a bad deal. The only problem is you'd have to have a pretty low CM. You'd like to have a low CMC commander if that's what your deck is trying to do, because remember, this is going to turn offline if you lose your commander or he or she's not on the battlefield.
Right.
You're not getting any advantage, which is another way they kind of balanced it out. But another cool thing is, like you were saying, if it is in your 99 and you turn on partners, you get that benefit twice, which is something to think about. Always something to think about with the backgrounds.
Yeah, I think the backgrounds definitely don't see enough play as a whole. And I've been guilty of it too. Like, there are so many backgrounds that do so many different things, and you're just kind of like overloaded, and you're like, oh, well, I can't keep track of all of them, so I don't know.
Oh, that's fair. That's definitely fair. There are a lot of them.
Next pick is another obscure one. Not super obscure. Some people know this card, but it's called Lethal Scheme. It's black, and 2 colorless for an instant. It has Convoke, which means you can tap your untapped creatures to help pay for this, and they either tap for a colorless or a black mana pip if they have a black mana in their colors. And you can destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then each creature that convoked connives.
Ooh, that seems really good.
So this card is currently, once again, I'm on a theme today. I'm picking cards that I think are underrepresented. It's in 6.4 thousand decks, less than 1% of the potential decks. If you compare this to Doomblade, which is a 2-mana, destroy target non-black creature, is in 26,000 decks. That should not be, right? Doomblade should not be in more decks. Doomblade is so outdated at this point. There's so many other, like Heartless Act, there's Terminate even. Terminate's in 87,000 decks.
Wow.
That's a crazy amount, right? This card, I think, is way better than Terminate or Doomblade. It's more online, in my opinion, with Deadly Rollick, which is in 84,000 decks. Deadly Rollick, for those of you who don't know, is a black and 3 colors. You exile target creature, and you can it's an instant, and you can cast it for free if you have your commander in play. So exile versus destroy is a pretty big difference.
Sure.
But this can be free. And so you could pay tap 4 creatures to cast this spell instant speed with no mana. So it's a free spell. And if you do that, you're drawing 4 cards and discarding and possibly making your creatures bigger.
Yeah, that's really, really good card selection on top of a removal card.
Yeah.
It seems like it should be getting more play. I've never seen this on a commander table, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and I think it's criminal. Absolutely criminal. This card should be a black staple. Any creature-based black deck should be running it. It's too good. And you know what? I've been guilty of it. I've seen this card now for several months, and I keep telling myself I need to pick some up. As I was doing my prep for this video, I went ahead and ordered 6 because I know I need to add them to all my black-based decks that are creature-based. And to be honest, most decks these days are creature-based.
Yeah.
So, at least for me.
Yeah, it also has that Planeswalker. It's nice that they've had that, like you were talking about earlier, like sticking it on the new removal cards where it's an added bonus.
Yeah, for sure. Which they don't come up a lot in Commander games, but when they do, it's going to be nice. If you're
100%.
trying to hide your Planeswalker or something, this is going to get it. Even if you can't attack it, you can get it.
All right, next up we have a legendary creature. It is Ellis Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. It is an Orzhov, so 1 white and 1 black. Legendary Phyrexian Core Cleric. He's a 2/2, or she is a 2/2, and with Death Touch. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Blood Artist effect in the command zone. Not much else to say. You can partner her with Luris. People love that companion. I mean, she's a house. If there's decks that are running combos for either Zilliport, Blood Artist, whatever have you, and they have not Veto or Yawgmoth in the command zone, like this is better. You get access to white, so you can get synergy with the life gain as well. It's a really cool card, and I actually do. I have the commander deck for this, and it's surprising how often that Death Touch makes it so I can swing in for 2 early for like the first like 5 rounds of the game. People are so afraid of the Death Touch.
Yeah, and it's not like you're sacrificing a lot. If they do block it, you can recast it for 4 mana. It's not like some of the commanders where you're putting too much mana investment into it.
Yeah, really fun. I think it's a cool one, and
I like that it's Phyrexian.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, and I'm expecting us to get some Phyrexian tribal support at some point.
A little Phyrexian tribal, that'd be cool.
So I don't know if you've seen the new spoiled card. Spoiler alert! Elesh Norn. It's a white and 4 colorless for a 4/7, and it basically gives you ETB Panharmonicon, right? So doubles, enters the battlefield effects. So this would double the life gain, and then it turns off ETB effects for opponents. So you could probably even work on building an Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim Phyrexian themed deck, right?
That'd be really cool.
It's cool. All will bow to the Whispering One, She-Old Red.
Yo, girl.
It's cool. Yeah, I know you have the deck for this, right? You built it with the.
With Luris.
Yeah, I remember playing a game where it was 3 Aristocrats decks at the table. Do you remember that?
Yeah, a lot of shenanigans going on. Yeah, it's tough out there.
Very hard math. I think I won that one just barely with Braids as my commander because I was able to sack something at the end just to do the last couple of points.
I think so, yeah. That's another good card. Maybe we'll talk about that one in a sec.
Yeah, Braids. Imagine that. That did come out in the last year. Feels like a lifetime ago.
It does, yeah. All right, next up for me, we've got another legendary creature. She can be your commander. She's really crazy. It's Braids, Arisen Nightmare. She costs 2 black pips and 1 colorless for a legendary nightmare creature. She is 3/3, and she has, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. This commander is kind of a house. It has card draw on it. It has that life loss on it. You're running these cheap cards that have really, you're not limited, right? You have artifact, creature, enchantment, land. You can sacrifice whatever you want and you get that huge advantage, and people aren't willing to pay for it. I've seen it happen so many times. I've started to be a little better, and I almost treat it like a Ristic study now, where I'm like, I got to think about what I can sacrifice on their end step, because it adds up. The damage adds up, the card draw adds up. Yep. You don't think it's huge, but you have to remember there's 3 other opponents, or 2 other opponents. Like the player has 3 opponents, so that's 3 cards at their end step if they sacrifice something. It's really cool, and it's also one of those commanders that I think now people are starting to see how powerful it is and maybe being susceptible to removal, but by itself, you don't really see, oh, it's a big beater or it has this giant effect, because it is just an in-step. Okay, I'll sacrifice, I'll lose something and, draw some cards, but the life really adds up too. Like I think you were saying, Martin, like it's flexible. At the end of a game, that 2 life can really add up, because it's every turn. But I don't know. What do you think about this one, Martin? Is this more of one you said you wanted in the command zone, or would you run it in the 99 for a black deck?
Oh yeah, I mean if I'm running for some reason another commander for aristocrat strategy, I'm definitely going to run Braids in that same deck. It's a sack outlet. It's a card draw. It's an engine. It's an amazing card. I took my I had a Aristocrats mono black list that I was running Tevish Zot and Keskit, I think, as my commanders. They're partner commanders.
Okay.
Tevish Zot sees a lot of play in more powerful decks, but Keskit's not really a big one. I tried to make it lower power level as far as Aristocrats go. and it wasn't built around braids. But I decided, hey, let's see what happens if I just shuffle it up and put braids in the commander instead.
Yeah.
And I won that commander game, right? And it felt really good. I think I even had an awkward draw. I ended up feeling really good. But if you build around it, it's even more insane. Don't give the opponents the choice, right? Like, build it around, like, artifacts. People have only so many mana rocks, right? And then they have to give you the two life and let you draw a card. Biggest problem I have with braids is that you have to figure out at the end of your turn which are your many cards you want to discard. So
yeah, you got a full
definitely
grip a lot of times.
Want Thought Vessel and Reliquary Tower and maybe that 3 mana one that came out in Baldur's Gate. All of the ways to not have to discard cards.
The Decanta. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
the Decanter.
That's a really
yeah.
good one. Yeah. I don't know. It's also notably, I don't think she's gonna see a lot of CEDH play, but it is anytime you see a monocolored for three mana, you think of that Jeweled Lotus, and you're like, ooh, that's a really good turn 1 play.
Ooh, yeah. Actually, I could see that.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know if there's enough support because it's hard, right? It's not like inherently broken in a way that CEDH would call like, hey, come play with me.
Drawing 3 cards a turn is inherently broken.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's a lot.
So,
yeah.
I mean, if you think that you pay 3 mana and you're drawing 3 cards a turn, I think that, and you're also pressuring the life of the
Ad Nos
player. Yeah, the Ad Nos player. So, I definitely think it would be kind of more fringe, but I could totally see a mono black deck built with this. I have a hard time seeing any mono black deck other than, what is it, Kirk? Post Malone. Other than Post Malone.
It's Post Malone. Posty.
Yeah,
yes.
Posty. Yeah. So other than Post Malone, I don't know many black cards commanders that can beat that because the mana reduction is also as important as drawing lots of cards. But I think it could be a tier 2.
A fringe. Yeah.
Yeah, fringe. Yeah. But she's my girlfriend in case you didn't know. I have a pillow with braids painted on it, and I hug it every night.
Every night. Kiss that Phyrexian. Is she
eventually
Phyrexian?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's got to be,
I don't
right?
know. It's a nightmare. She looks Phyrexian in the picture. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we might have to ask the Vorthos players out there. If you know who this is, let us know in the comments below. Subscribe and like.
There you go.
All right, let's move on.
Okay. All right, next up we got a house. She is Lorraine of the Third Path. She's 2/1 for 2 colorless and 1 white pip, a legendary human artificer. She has vigilance, and when she ETBs, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. She can also tap, and you and target opponent each draw a card. This card is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. It goes in almost any white deck just because of the removal, and then on top of that, you have a little fun game to play where you and a target opponent each draw a card. Some people hate giving other players resources, but I think it's a lot of fun. It gives into that kind of EDH spirit of like, okay, we're going to talk about who wants to draw this card with me and why I should want you over that player. So it's a lot of fun. Plus,
Right.
like, this should cost more mana. Period. Like the fact that it's printed at like the same cost of. No, you don't think so?
It's a 2/1.
I guess
So it's a great reclamation sage, right?
Yeah.
3 and 2 colorless for a 2/1 that destroys an artifact. It's got the added bonus of you and an opponent drawing a card, which maybe is worth mana, but maybe not because you're paying for it by letting somebody else draw a card.
That's fair.
Right? I think it's appropriately costed. And I do like blowing up artifacts and enchantments. You know how I am about graveyard removal, like exiling graveyard stuff is always high, but after that is probably another one that's underplayed is artifact and enchantment removal. Should be main deck in more decks so they can interact with that stuff. I've got another card. I'll talk more about it in a little bit.
Yeah, I do kind of wish they had haste or flash on this card, but you can't win them all.
Yeah. I mean, I think if they added haste to it, they'd have to make it red, too.
Oh, because then it wouldn't fit on the white. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, white usually doesn't have haste, so it kind of screws up the color pie so that it just wouldn't make sense. So I think they probably would have given it haste if they could have.
No, that's fair. Is this one that you've been seeing a lot as a commander, too? I haven't seen it at all.
I mean, it shows up a little bit on EDH Rec, but it's not like a mainstream commander. I could see using it as like a commander for a politics mono white deck. You know, it's just, hey, this is what my deck does. It's gonna make politics and it's gonna do deals and the biggest deals.
Huge.
Huge. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so this is out of your picks. I think this one's probably the most vanilla.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because really, when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people won't use the tap ability.
Really?
Like, unless they're about to die, and they're digging for an answer, or they're trying to help somebody else dig for an answer.
People hate.
But
hate
I think
that giving people resources that much.
So, if you've ever played competitive 1v1 Magic, you really get instilled in the deepest part of your bones that the person who wins draws more cards.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're using a card, so you're down a card, for you both to draw one card. So that means your opponent's up one card, and you're not even up a whole card because you just got your original one replaced.
That's fair. That's fair.
Right? So I think it's a big problem, like especially since competitive Magic died not long before, like around COVID and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to build it back. I don't know if it ever will, especially now that Arena's there and people can, grind their PTQs or whatever
Do it
in their
online.
underwear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the competitive Magic will ever really come back in the way it was before. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. It's the reason why stuff like Secret Rendezvous
is the best
mocked.
card ever. Wait, no. I feel like I can finish your sentence there.
Yeah, okay. I know that the more competitive the player, the more likely they are going to be not as into symmetrical effects.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to make those good in 1v1. But I do understand if it's a symmetrical effect that affects less than 4 players, can be really good in Commander. Because you like in Secret Rendezvous, you just pick whoever's the furthest behind with you. Or you pick whoever is going to have to discard anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can mitigate that in Commander, which makes it good, especially since you're not in a traditional draw card color, although that is changing.
Yeah.
So, I like this card. I like it simply as a Reclamation Sage, and I think it's a nice bonus. I mean, I will never... I won't be too many games where I use it.
You're not tapping this bad boy.
If I feel like I'm already in a good spot in a game, I'm definitely not tapping to give anybody else a card.
That's fair.
If I'm behind and I know that I'm not likely to win the game, then I'll be tapping it. And I'll be trying to figure out who's got the cards in their deck that'll most help answer the problems at the table.
To deal with the threat, yeah. That's fair. Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Next up, from the most popular set of all time, is Unfinity card, Magar of the Magic Strings.
Martin, what set is this from? This is not a real card.
Infinity.
Get this card out of here. This is garbage.
It does not have an acorn.
How is this legal?
It's a very much real card. It's legal. It's fine. It's okay.
Oh my
It doesn't make you dance or anything. It's silly like that.
What does it do?
Now, this card could be printed in a normal Magic set, right? So it's a red and a black and a colorless for a 3/3 Minotaur Performer. Doesn't play well in Minotaur tribal decks, but that's okay. It's a red, black, and a colorless to activate its ability. And you basically make an instant or sorcery from your graveyard into a 3/3 creature on the battlefield. Any point in time that creature deals damage to another player, you can copy that spell and cast it for free. Right? It's a lot more words to say that, but that's largely because of the way the rules work, so they have to word it in certain ways to get around certain obstacles to make this effect happen.
Gotcha.
But, this isn't making you do anything crazy. It's not making you, like...
Martin, they couldn't fit another word on this card if they tried. The whole text box is filled up.
Oh, no, there's smaller fonts than that. They're smaller. Have you ever seen Ice Cauldron?
No.
Ice Cauldron has more words on it than that.
Oh.
Okay, that was from Ice Age. But anyway, so the reason why I think this is crazy is it's got 700 decks total. 700.
Good. Let's keep it that way.
No. This card is pretty high powered. Red gives you the ability to get spells into your graveyard. right? To use this to activate. And then you can be swinging with 10 mana spells using unblockability, because there are some equipment that do that in lands. And you can be doing big fun things with spells. Don't be prejudicial.
I'm hating on this set. I'm sorry.
So this is the most played commander from Unfinity.
Oh, really?
Absolute most played commander from Unfinity. There are 7 different commanders from the 40k decks with more decks than this, and they all came out at the same time.
Yeah, I just...
And I mean, there's like literal like thousands of decks for some of these 40k commanders versus 700 of this. If you had just printed this during like Brothers War, there would be so many more decks for this, because this ability is fun.
Yeah.
This ability is cool. It's just the fact that it was printed on Infinity. And if you look at like the Infinity cards, if you search EDH Rec by Infinity, and you organize it based on number of decks that it's played in, there are a lot of cards that are underplayed for their archetypes. A couple of the other ones that were on my list that we're not going to be talking about today are Strength Testing Hammer. Bamboozling Beeble, 674 decks. It gives you roll manipulation, right? So it allows you to roll an extra time when you're doing dice rolling. Pixie Guide, which has the same effect, is 3,000 decks. That's a pretty big disparity between, and they're similar effects. If you're running Pixie Guide because you're doing lots of dice rolling, you're probably going to want to be running Bamboozling Beeble, even though it's really hard to say.
Bamboozle.
Bamboozling Beeble. And then the Monitor is also another one where it lets you re-roll for 1 mana. There's only 800 decks. And then the Videlkin Squirrel Whacker. I mean, these names are kind of extreme.
I wonder why people don't play these cards.
But the Squirrel Whacker allows you to like bank powerful rolls for your roll deck, right? So if you're running blue-red like dice rolling from the original Dungeons and Dragons set, right? Forgotten Realms. Then these are cards you probably want in those decks if you want to try and win games. They're not on theme, but they are good for those things. So just something I think, this is my token. Infinity is not all bad.
Maybe I need to open my mind up and become more accepting of other people's opinions, but I probably won't, because Infinity sucks.
They are so cheap, man.
Oh, I'm sure.
Other than like the shocks, these cards are all so cheap, and really should pick them up because they won't get like the Videlkin Squirrel Whacker will not be reprinted in a main set.
Yeah, that's fair.
So the next time dice rolling comes around, this card will not be reprinted. This card, if they continue to do Dice Sport, this card will eventually be like a $20 common or uncommon, whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just the kind of card that there's not many places you could print it, so it's going to slowly eke, and then it'll be like the card in a secret lair one day. Because that card's worth $20. That makes his whole secret lair worth it.
Yeah, they could. They might end up doing that with some of these commanders from the Infinity sets, because I do think some of their lack in popularity is literally just the set they come from. So if they got around that, maybe they'd open up some people's eyes that are like me and just don't like Infinity.
Yeah, but if I had put a little post-it around this, you would not know this is Infinity.
You're probably...
the
art is maybe a dead give. I don't know. Maybe not a dead giveaway, but yeah.
Art's a little goofy, but
we should do that. We should have is this an Infinity card or is it a normal card?
Right?
Yeah.
That'd be a good game.
That'd be a good one.
All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Next up, it's squad time. Talking about 40k, we got Space Marine Devastator. It's a white and 3 colorless for a 3/3 squad 2. And squad is basically each time you pay 2 colorless in addition to its casting cost, you create that many copies of this. So that many tokens. And when it enters the battlefield, you destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So you don't have to destroy your artifacts or enchantments, but you can destroy as many as you have mana. So for 4 mana you get 1, 6 mana you get 2, plus the bodies to boot.
Yeah.
This is a great card. White was originally the destroy artifacts and enchantments color way back in Alpha, with Disenchant, white and color, one color.
Yeah.
Later became Naturalize, right? But nowadays, green is way better at it for whatever reason than white. It's not like white's got a lot of things in its repertoire, but still, green is usually better. So this is one of the first ones of those in a while. So I really like it. And there was another one recently that you covered already. Time travel. So you covered it already. Lauren. From Brothers War, right? So just kind of showing you the difference here and why I found this one interesting is this one shows up in only 2,400 decks, while Lauren, that just came out last month, is already in over 5,000 decks.
Wow.
Let alone the ones that Lauren's a commander of. So kind of interesting miss, but there was so much in 40K that I'm not surprised a couple of them have still not started to shine as much as they could.
Sure. Do you think that has anything to do with people wanting to keep the precons assembled as is, with the art being like all matching?
Yeah, that might be part of it, but if you also look at a lot of the ones, any of the ones that are around 3,000 cards, they're only in basically the precon that's been slightly modified.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's kind of one of the things that's not really clear when you're dealing with EDH rec data. I'd like to do a deep dive on it at some point to really figure out how good that data is. But it'll be like, hey, this is in a deck where the commander is the same one as the original commander. So how many of those are just the precon? How many of those are modified precons?
Okay.
But yeah, so I do think that this card is just only right now in the 40K decks, basically, or their modified versions, which I just think is criminal. Any kind of deck that can play this and likes bodies is going to put good use to this card.
Yeah, and it's enter the battlefield. It's not even when you cast it, so you can abuse it.
You can flicker,
use and abuse it. Seems like a good
I mean, I could imagine late game, casting this, blowing up 3 key artifacts and enchantments, and just really swinging the game back in your favor.
For sure. Good include. Definitely have to pick that one up. I don't have one yet.
Oh, yeah. Get it while it's cheap. It's only a couple bucks right now, so.
Dang. Definitely will spike. All right, next up we have Space Robot Boy with 3 arms. Let's go. It is Ping Tribal Master Geras Starn Kelemorph. He is 1 colorless, 1 blue pip, and 1 red. He's a legendary Tyrannid human, 3/2. He has Ward 2, and he has 3 auto stubs. Not to be confused with arms, they are auto stubs. Whenever another source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, Geras Starn Kelemorph will deal 2 damage to that permanent or player. The deck is strong if you run him in the command zone. It's only going to get stronger as you see more Curiosity effects printed, but it's also really cool because I think a lot of Niv Mizzet players want to run that as a commander, and it's almost just a better Niv Mizzet Perun. Am I wrong? Yeah.
No,
I mean,
you're totally right. Yeah.
I don't think. I don't. If you're running Niv Mizzet in like a very fair deck, yeah. But if you're like pushing that like competitive EDH or even just higher level, it's just a better version of the card. It doesn't have the card draw on it inherently with like when you draw a card, deal 1 damage. But the Curiosity would still run the same way if you could get it to deal 1 damage. And there's a lot of different ways to go about building him, which can be really fun because you can go infinite by making a copy of him. If you can make a non-legendary copy and get
Spark double.
Yeah, and get his power down to 1, it'll just go infinite. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through, but a really fun way to try and build it. I've seen 2 or 3 different Geras Starn decks. All of them have been extremely powerful and they'll present wins. But the Pinger Tribal too is just like it's a cool deck. It might get a little hate at the commander table. I don't know if you see somebody plop this down as their commander, Martin. What are you thinking?
Shit my pants.
Pretty much on the spot.
Probably, yeah. This is a very scary commander. This isn't a fun-loving kind of commander. It's the same thing with like Niv Mizzet though. Like the same thing. I play against that player, I am going to be. It's very unlikely that I don't consider them one of the highest, if not the highest threat at the table.
100%.
So that's kind of the downside. Having Ward 2 is super nice here.
Yeah.
Kind of insane, actually, if you think about it, because he comes down turn 3, and then after that you can untap, and you'll have counter magic up, and you're able to protect your win con. Pretty good. I'm not sure how many more Curiosities they're going to print. Curiosity is a blue mana for an enchantment. Whenever an enchanted creature deals damage to any target, draw a card. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to print a lot of those to try and get more infinite combos. But
Yeah, that's fair.
the thing I do like about this is that you can build it super casual. And if you were going to have that kind of conversation with your play group, and you know they're going to let you play it as a casual commander, then go ham, have your fun deck.
Yeah.
But don't show up casual commander night, play this guy, and expect not to get hated. Right?
Yeah.
They're
This
gonna
one
target
definitely will.
you.
It will draw a lot of hate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
I mean, if you have that conversation beforehand, you know they're not going to, and you're just going to try and take your fun pinger deck to the table, sure. Even that's pretty strong.
Mhm.
But obviously it's not as strong as some of the infinites you can do.
Yeah, for sure.
The another nice add to this guy that's recently came out that isn't seeing a lot of play is Mechanized Warfare. Have you seen that one?
Ooh, I have not. What does that one do?
It's a red, and a colorless, and it says whenever a red or artifact source you control would deal 1 damage, it deals 1 more damage instead.
Oh gosh.
Right? So on Ping or Tribal, you say, okay, I'm going to tap my guy, does 1 damage to everybody. Actually, it's 2. Oh, wait, no, that wouldn't work.
Is that 2
it wouldn't-
instances of 1 damage, or is it just 3 damage?
No, it's
Huh.
just 2 damage. But it would increase the second effect by Gearson Starn. It would turn off the rest. Oh, no, it's not good in this one. No. Mm-mm. No bueno. That's
bueno.
what we call a non-bow in the business.
Brooch.
Anything else you want to add on this one?
Oh no. Warhammer's cool.
Are you running this guy? Are you running this guy in the 99 of any other commanders?
That's a fair question. I'm trying to think. Probably not. I mean, he's really good in Niv Mizzet, but
Yeah, and Mizzet, yeah, as a duplicate, like you
Um,
can have two versions.
yeah,
but
it's just tough because he's doing damage, but he's not giving you a super ton amount of value.
So Torbrand is the same non-bow as Mechanized Production or Mechanized Warfare, where the Torbrand says if it would do damage, it does that much damage plus 2 instead, which stops.
Oh, okay.
It's a non-bow also with this, right? Like you have Torbrand in this deck, and then all of a sudden all your pingers are doing 3, and this guy's doing jack.
0. Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's important to keep that in mind. But I can't think of any commander I'd want this in. But I do love the idea of playing this in a deck that just does 1 damage to everything a bunch of times, like Pyrrhenia.
Oh yeah.
It's a red, and 2 colorless. You pay a red mana, does 1 damage to all creatures and all players. Whoo, that's a lot of damage real fast.
Yeah, definitely adds up.
But first couple times it'll kill him, though, is the only problem.
All right, next up we have the Dark Master himself, Be'lakor. He is a bit of a pricey boy. He costs 3 colorless, a blue, a black, and a red. He has flying. He's a demon noble and he's a 6/5. He has an ability, Prince of Chaos. When he ETBs, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of demons you control. And he also has Lord of Torment. When another demon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So clearly set up to be the Dark Master, the demon tribal commander. But it's also, I think it's kind of like the backgrounds, where it's another example of a card that Wizards printed, where I think it's aptly costed. It's not too powerful. I think it makes for fun commander games, and it gets back to kind of where Commander originally started with, okay, I'm going to play a 6 mana commander that is a big boy that does a really fun effect. Like you're not comboing off with this guy. You're kind of you're just hitting with fists, and it makes for a really fun gameplay. I don't think I would necessarily build him as a commander myself, but I think it's a lot of fun to see other people play him, and every time I've seen him play out, it does play fairly well because demons themselves are pretty powerful and they do really cool stuff if you haven't played with them before. So
Yeah,
what do you think,
I
Martin?
mean, I would put this guy in my tribal deck for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I
Every
know,
tribe,
you're
tribal,
not really a
tribal.
big fan of the tribal, but
It's fake
no,
tribal.
I like this guy. So one of the things you look for in a commander is a couple things, right? You want there to be a threat involved, like some kind of damage and being aggressive. And a 6/5 flyer alone is pretty aggressive. And then on top of that, every new demon that comes down is now doing the Terror of the Peaks thing,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So, but for demons instead of dragons, so it's kind of similar. Hopefully, they'll print some demon cost reducers out there. I know there's one from original Kamigawa back in the day when I was a young whippersnapper. And then it also draws you cards, which is huge, right? Like,
yeah,
it comes down, if it's your only one, you still draw a card. So, ideally, you have like 2 or 3, and I do think because of the casting cost of most demons, you're going to want at least a few changelings in your deck to fill out your curve and your function.
don't listen to him.
You don't have to be full tilt tribal, but
Yeah.
a couple of those
Sure,
just to kind of
sure.
make sure you draw at least 2 or 3 cards off this guy, and you're going to be pretty happy.
Yeah, it would definitely help to round him out. That's for sure. Yeah.
I was going through, so just talk about popularity level. That was one of the big things I was looking for, is popularity level of cards when I was doing my review for this. And it's amazing how many more decks the average 40k card had than some of the other sets this year.
Oh really?
So so like so much more popular than a lot of the other decks. I found that really fascinating. I have a couple on my list that if we have time we'll get to. But it's just so absurd. So you're looking at Jumpstart just came out, but even going back to like Dominaria United, they
Yeah.
drop off pretty fast, the number of cards showing up in percentages of decks. While I had to go almost through half the cards in this before I started finding cards that were, more obscure, that weren't seeing a lot of play.
Wow.
But yeah, home run of a set, probably best commander decks of all time from a number of metrics. So good pick.
Awesome.
Next up for me is a card that does see some play. It came out also in Baldur's Gate. Is Nautiloid Ship. It's 4 mana for a 5/5 artifact vehicle. Has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. And then, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with Nautiloid Ship onto the battlefield under your control. So, this card sees play, right? And I've been trying to focus on the cards that I think are underplayed. But, for example, this is only in 1% of possible decks. But that's 1% of all decks. So, I
It's
think the
colorless.
cat's
Yeah.
out of the bag, right, for colorless, because it's 6,000 decks, which is a pretty good amount. But one of the reasons why I picked this one is because I think it's still underplayed. I think if you have creatures and your commander has a power of 3, you should be running this card. What this is going to do for you is you're going to have main deck Graveyard Hate. I like to have 3 to 6 pieces of main deck Graveyard Hate. And then you have a way to get further advantage by exiling, by casting one of those creatures that you've exiled with it. So take like Captain Negrathod. Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
know who you're talking about. Yeah.
He's the horror commander.
Horror guy. Yeah. The
Yeah,
typical
you
David
mill.
Jones looking.
Yeah, you mill, and then you can reanimate cards from that. So the reason why I bring this up, I think this card should be in every mill deck that has creatures, right? Captain Negrathod has 3 power. Now, you're going to say, but Captain Negrathod wants to reanimate creatures from their graveyard, and you need their graveyard to be around so that you can steal those creatures at end step. Agreed. But I'll see you this. Do you want to be milling somebody that's over there trying to reanimate creatures?
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
You're not trying to help them out. Yeah.
No.
Put in a bad spot.
Yeah, so this is a way to kind of like make it so that you should have more Graveyard Hate in those strategies so that you're not over here feeding your opponent's combo.
Yeah.
So that's that for me. I feel like this card is underplayed because of that. Should be in every mill deck of any kind, especially if you have power creatures. Captain Nigurthad in general. It's only in 7% of those decks right now, and it came from the same set, right? So that means people that were buying that deck at that time knew about this card probably and decided, I'm not going to include that. And I think
It's
that's
not
wrong.
an include, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's also like it has flying. You're gonna be able to get in. And that second ability is gonna trigger if you have 3 opponents in this early enough. You're gonna have somebody that doesn't have flyers and be able to hit somebody.
Yeah.
And it's also like they did a good job thinking about it, and they said target players. So if you're in a self mill situation where okay, well maybe my opponents don't have any creatures, boom, just hit your own graveyard.
Yep.
Not the end of the world. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a really good call out, Ben. I think that's awesome. I didn't even think about that. That's great. I did think about the fact that the graveyard that you exile with Nautiloid Ship doesn't have to be the same player that you hit with it with combat damage. So,
oh yeah,
right? So,
that's a good point.
so if, for example, there are a bunch of artifacts and enchantments on the board that you're having a hard time getting rid of in your mono black deck, and there's an Enchantress player out there, you might be able to get one of the other people, other than the Enchantress player, let you to hit them with this, just to reanimate somebody's Bane of Progress to clear the board.
100%. Yeah,
Right?
you can definitely switch it up and turn it into a political thing where it's like, hey, do you have an answer in your graveyard?
Exactly.
Maybe we can work together. It's kind of cool. Yeah, and it's a vehicle, so it's not going to draw a lot of hate.
You can
Probably only only getting removed by your Vandal Blast, or if it's in a situation where it's already crewed. So it's got a little protection around it. It's neat. Really cool card.
Sweet.
You know him. You love him. He's going to pull himself out of a hat. It's Preston. What a good human name for an animal. Some people don't like that. I'm one of those, but I make an exception for this good boy. He is a legendary rabbit wizard. He's a 2/5 for 3 colorless and 1 white pip. He goes infinite with a ham sandwich. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't cast, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 0/1 white illusion. Also, he has 1 colorless and a white for sacrifice 5 illusions, exile target non-land permanent. I know it just came out. We talked about it last week on the podcast, but boy, do I love this card. If you have any kind of blink deck, it's just so good in white. It's so good.
Let me ask you this. If I were
Go
to
right
show my
ahead.
brother this card, who knows almost nothing about Magic, and I asked
Oh,
him,
no.
is this from the main set or is this from Infinity, which is like the goofy side set?
Oh,
Which one do you think he would pick?
I don't. That's a good question. It'd be a 50-50. I don't know your brother.
Oh.
It's a wizard. It's a wizard. The art is a little questionable, I guess, but you're right. It does.
It's a rabbit wizard. Come on, man. If you're okay with this, you
Oh.
should be okay with all of Infinity. That is
Dude,
legal, right?
You've got me questioning everything now. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. I'm a
I don't know.
convincing orator.
Yeah.
So tell
But
me,
yeah.
like, what deck are you excited to put this in?
I mean, any blink deck. Personally, I have Raynar, the Ever Watchful blink deck, and I'm trying to get some exile until creature card leaves the battlefield effect, or just a straight up Restoration Angel or Fellow Dark Guardian. Restoration Angel doesn't work because it's the illusion is.
An
Would
angel.
that work?
No,
I think
actually,
it is.
it's. Oh, is it a white illusion in addition to or instead of?
That's a
But
great
either way,
question.
you wouldn't be able to flicker it back out.
No, it
maybe you
can't
could-
target.
It can't come back in, but it could maybe go out.
It could go out once. Yeah, but it's really good because it allows you to just flicker stuff more. So anytime you have a Soul Herder or, like I said, Restoration Angel, Fiend Hunter, you have Mysterious Limousine, all of those effects that give you the creature back when that card leaves the battlefield, it's going to come back, but it's not going to be cast. So you're going to get another effect like that, but it's on a 0/1 white illusion. So it's really cool in blink decks. It's kind of expensive right now. I was thinking about picking one up, Martin. Would you recommend that right now at its current price point? Because I do know it's kind of expensive.
It's got goofy art, man. You can't buy that.
No. Dude,
I
I feel so bad for the Infinity people now. You're right though. It is a goofy art.
Yeah, man. It's the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so putting all that aside, I'm only giving you a hard time because of your recent hate of Infinity. But a lot of the Jumpstart cards are still high.
Okay.
And I think that's because of the time of year it was dropped at. So it was basically mid-November, late November, heading into the holiday season. I think a lot of people are not spending a bunch of money on boxes of cards right now. There's been a product overload. Most recently, there was the 40K Commanders X not that long ago.
Yep.
And then you had into the 30K anniversary, 30-year anniversary cards, and then you had the which was I'm not talking about the proxy crap. I'm talking about like the
secret lair.
And now the most recent
yeah.
secret lair too. It's just there's a lot of pulling on money right now for these cards, and so I think that a lot of people haven't bought the singles. But if these prices continue to go up, people will crack a bunch of these boxes. There will be a Amazon deal where you can get the boxes for like $80 a pop, and then all of a sudden people start buying 5, 6, 7 boxes at a time. They get the cards they want, they sell the rest, and this will depress the market overall. So I'm personally waiting until like mid to late January before I even start thinking about it and trying to watch the price trends. If you look back at the cards that were hyped in the most recent set, like Dominaria United, those are still trickling down slowly. So they're not at the floor yet, I don't think. They're going to keep going down because the hype train keeps on rolling. And then the people are no longer that interested in those, so you can go back and pick those up for cheaper prices. If you're the kind of person that wants to run these cards like right now because you're that excited about them, and you just, then it's worth the extra money because then you get to play with them a couple months earlier. Not the end of the world, but from a financial perspective, I would recommend waiting if you're wanting to pick these up and you're not in a big hurry, which I'm not.
No, that's a really good explanation for why. I didn't think I understood when you brought it up at first, but that does make a lot of sense, especially with the holidays around the corner. I'll definitely wait then to pick up my Wizard Rabbit.
Wizard Rabbit. Next up, in the vein of more black removal that should see more play, is Overwhelming Remorse. 4 colorless and a black instant, and it exiles target creature or planeswalker. That's a great deal, right? That's so good. 5 mana? Deal with your threat. The thing that makes this good is it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. So this could cost as little as 1 black mana. And in fact, if the deck is running it that I would want to run it, it's probably casting it for 1 black mana most of the time.
Yeah.
This is kind of in the same vein as Lethal Scheme. It's a card that is just, there's so many cards coming out that we lose track, and the hive mind has a hard time keeping up. This is definitely a card that I think if you run a lot of creatures like Graveyard Strategies, Shenanigans, this is going to cost a black or colorless, and it exiles, right? So at a black, if this just said 1 black, exile target creature or planeswalker, it would be in every single commander deck of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But this card barely sees play. It's sitting at 1,000 decks total.
Man, that's the second black removal card, Martin, that you've embarrassed me. I'm looking at my Orzhov deck over here saying, why don't I have these black removal cards in it? Those are 2 really good ones. This one seems really good.
Yeah. Well, you know me, I like to play a lot of black cards, so I'm very finger on the pulse when it comes to the good black cards.
Yeah.
And this is definitely just really pushed. It's what was it called? It's like Delve, but you don't actually have to delve the cards.
Oh, they just stay in the graveyard. Yeah, so if you were in a Reanimator,
in the graveyard. Yeah, so you still you still get to use those. Like, so Murderous Cut was one that I thought saw too little play before, but it still saw quite a bit of play. But it didn't see as much as I would like. But you had to exile the creatures and stuff, so it's like not as good. But this one, by the time you're actually wanting to remove threats, which is not early in the game a lot of times in Commander, it's towards the end game. You're gonna be sitting there with a fat graveyard, and you're like, okay, this is 1 or 2 mana. I don't know.
Yeah, and
I think it's underplayed.
It's great that it's instant speed. I don't know why I have sorcery removal in my black deck, but I just thought about that. I was like, if somebody goes to exile your graveyard, you can just do this and respond.
What sorcery?
It's bad.
I don't. You run?
It's bad. It's like
you gotta say it. You gotta say it.
It's the 1 black, sacrifice a creature and then destroy target creature, I think.
Bone Shards?
Bone Shards, yep. That's like a draft card, isn't it?
Man.
It's bad. I know it's bad.
Not in every format, it's not. There's another one that came out that's a little bit better because Exile. It's the black one from Midnight Hunt. It's a black or and sacrifice a creature or pay 5 mana to exile target creature or planeswalker.
Baleful
I mean,
something.
I could see running.
It's baleful something. I forget what the rest of the word is though. Baleful Mastery, I think.
No, that's a black and 3 colorless, or you can pay it for black and a colorless.
Oh, I'm dumb.
If you let the opponent draw a card.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. No.
But yeah, no, the one I'm talking about, I could see playing over this, even though it's a sorcery, because of the sacrifice ability. So if you're really an aristocrats deck,
Oh yeah.
then I could see wanting to play that instead, because it gives you a sack outlet.
Sure.
In worst case, you could just pay the 5 mana instead. But I'm thinking more like, you know, like your mill decks and things like that. You're gonna want to run something like this, or Carador, right? The Abzan commander that he costs.
Yeah.
He can cast creatures from the graveyard, right? Or Marin. Marin would be another good one for this.
We don't
right?
talk about
Not
Marin.
where you're like, look. Yeah. Yeah. Sean will show up.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one?
No, I need to buy it. This is a good include. Thank you, Martin. Thank you
no
for
problem.
fixing
That's
my
what I'm
black
here for.
removal.
Next up is the Draft All-Star Micromancer. It's a blue and 3 colorless for a human wizard that's a 3/3. It says whenever Micromancer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with mana value 1, exactly 1, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle. So this is not winning any awards for being mana efficient. But one of my favorite things is to have as many tools at your disposal as possible. And Micromancer allows you to search for card draw, it allows you to search for removal, it allows you to search for artifact hate. Like, this finds Vandal Blast in a blue-red deck, right?
Yeah.
So if you're facing an artifact opponent, this thing is going to find that Vandal Blast for you, so it gives you an additional redundancy. I know some people like as much randomness as possible in their commander games. It's kind of part of the format, but I'm not one of those people. I'm not like tutoring for combo pieces and stuff, but if I can find an answer when I need to be able to keep playing the game, that's a thing I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the cards you can find for it, like I said, Vandal Blast, you can find Earthquake, which is a board sweeper for non-flying creatures. There's also one that kills a red and X that kills non-horsemanship.
Oh,
that one's
yeah.
more expensive.
That like rolling
That
earthquake.
one's more expensive financially. Yeah. No, Rolling Earthquake's something else, but it's it does the same effect, but basically will wrath all creatures, even flyers. Flusterstorm, Gamble, so you can tutor something else. The March Cycle is pretty good.
Tutor for a tutor. Always a good idea.
Yeah, tutor for a Hey, I mean, if you're desperate.
Yeah.
Swan Song to protect what you're trying to do the next turn. And then combo pieces, it can find you Whim of Volrath. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
So it's a combo card in the blue clone deck. It's the guy from Kaldheim.
Tentacle Boy. The copy stuff. No.
Yeah, maybe he's tentacle. I don't know what his picture looks like. I don't pay that close attention to art.
Oh. When you target
so
something, you make a copy of it.
Or yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So Whim of Volrath is a blue and like 2 or 3 colorless, and makes target permanent like a different color or something. I don't know. The relevant thing is it targets a permanent. It's got buyback for 2. So if you're playing that deck, this is an additional tutor to find that. So it's just, I think, a card. I don't remember. I didn't make a note of what number of decks it's actually being ran in, but I think it's not enough because of the versatility. If you're a fan of toolboxes, this is a toolbox card, and it allows you to help find those toolbox kind of things.
100%. And like you said, like it's more flexible than meets the eye with you getting your X spells or like you said, flashback or overload cards. It's a lot better than I thought when I first read it. It's a very good explanation of where you can find the hidden value in a card like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's one other one I just want to mention real quick. It's Corpse Appraiser. This is one of my pet cards, so take it with a grain of salt. But it's Grixis colors, blue, red, and a black for a 3/3. And when it enters the battlefield, you can exile a card from any graveyard. If it's a creature, you can look at the top 3 and put one of those in your hand. So it's graveyard hate, and a little bit of draw mixed in for a 3-mana 3/3. Sees a lot of play in Standard right now because it's a value piece in the Grixis decks. But the reason why I like it is I could see it going in Marchesa or on Hello. On Hello?
Oh, yeah, the painter.
You remember that guy?
The painter.
The painter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got 3 power, so you can sack it to, like,
for the casualty.
copy some of your later spells. Yeah,
Mhm.
casualty. And in Marchesa, you're able to, like, get counters on it and bring it back and back and back to go over and over again. It's recurring graveyard hate that also draws you cards and finds you other things. Just one of the cards that was on my list of cards that I wanted to bring up if we had time, but I think we'll save the rest for another video.
That's fair. That's fair. Some really good ones, though. I think my favorite ones have got to be those black removal cards. I'm definitely picking some of those up. Those are 2 great ones you went over today. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, they're vegetables.
They're
man.
really gotta
They're
eat
like
them
cards
veggies.
that you need in your deck, but they're not like super fun or exciting. But they're not that expensive either, like $1 or $2 most for each of them.
Put olive oil on them; they'll taste okay. Okay.
You also have to do salt and pepper.
Oh yes. How could I forget? All right, Martin. We've talked about some crazy good cards and some crazy niche cards from this year. What do we have for Finance Corner this week?
So this week I wanted to talk about something that is always in the back of the mind of anybody who thinks about Magic Finance, and that is reserve list. So reserve list cards are cards that were printed at some point in Magic's history, and then they were put on this list where the cards could not be reprinted by Wizards of the Coast. And supposedly, originally, they were not supposed to be reprinted in any capacity, even like in non-playable format, like collector's edition.
They lied.
They did lie, and that's
Just a
kind of
little
why I
bit.
want to talk just a little bit. So I want to talk about it. So if you look at Wheel of Fortune, Wheel of Fortune is a great example of a card that sees lots and lots of play in Commander.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's pretty much a staple in any red decks. People opt not to play it mainly because of price tag, not really because of power level.
100%. 100%.
So if you look at this card and you see at its peak, we saw it was pretty low back in, well, comparatively low, back in like July of 2020. It was sitting at 224 average, but 177 market. That means you could buy a copy that's playable for like $177. And then towards the end of, to beginning of January 2021, we saw a huge spike. The average got up to an absurd $986. But the market was only $286. And the weird thing is, after these spikes, you actually see the market price go up, the price you actually can buy the cards at. Because that means while the average went really high, the cards started slowly jumping up. So you can see how it continued, even though the average started coming down, the market was actually going up and kept going up, until it peaks out around 427, right? It was about the peak of the market price. But ever since, it's been slowly going down. And it gets all the way down here to current day, 306. And so I know in a lot of minds of collectors is, should I buy? Should I sell? I mean, I'm sitting on potentially thousands and thousands of dollars in cards. Should I be keeping these cards or should I be selling them?
Yeah.
And if you are a player first, then keep them. They're not going to be not good to play with later. They're not printing anything better than Wheel of Fortune.
No,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I definitely keep them. But if you're really just sitting on them in your vault, sell. You should have sold probably a while back. You always sell high, buy low. These things have been going down steadily. And you may notice that just in the last, let's see here, yeah, since September 26th, they've lost $30, 10% loss. That's a pretty big loss when you're thinking about investment-wise. 10% in 3 months?
Yeah.
That's huge. And what happened 3 months ago? 30 edition got announced.
Yeah,
So-
unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't have any more finance bros showing up saying, oh, I'm going to buy these reserve list cards because they're rare. That's yesterday's news. So at this point, you have people that are holding what they already have, be out of habit. Like they say, well, it's already mine. I don't want to sell. And then you have people selling out, right? You know, so I would not be looking to buy these right now.
Hmm.
And they were on my to buy list just a few months ago. Like I picked up a few dual lands, like a
Yep.
couple of other reserve list cards. And I was planning on continuing to buy reserve list cards I needed for my commander collection. Just get one of each of the reserve list cards that are playable. Um, and then, I just proxy the rest because it's just one of those people. But now, with everything the way it is, I think that most people are no longer buying reserve list cards. I think what's happening is a lot of people are actually just proxying because I think it's become socially acceptable.
Yeah.
So this is just putting people on alert. Maybe don't buy those expensive reserve list cards
Yeah,
right now.
I think WotC lost a lot of faith with their community after they, reprinted the list, even if it was for a set that's non-tournament legal. It's like there's a lack of faith, especially with how they handled the situation, where they're like, "We did nothing wrong." Like, it's like
Yeah.
you should at least own the like what you're doing. You can come out and say it, but I don't know. It's bad feels all around. Yeah, I got into a conversation the other day with a player at the game store with the topic of, do you think Wizards would ever reprint dual lands and call them something else?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like they did the Triumphs with, Xander's Lounge, all those lands. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that'd be something in their realm of possibility to really squeeze the lifeblood out of their community?
So if you go back and I'm recalling all this information from memory.
Sure. Yeah.
I think I've got most of the facts straight because this is something I've followed since it originally happened after Chronicles was released back in the day in like 95, 96, something. So they had printed Chronicles, which was this shitstorm of a white border print. They put a lot of the popular cards in there, right? Not cards that later become valuable, but at the time, those were the cards that had a lot of the value. They specifically reprinted cards that had a high value, and it tanked all of the cards that were reprinted. The original versions, of course, the new ones weren't worth a lot because this was such a heavily printed set. Like on level of a core set, like a revised was originally printed as same kind of print run, but with like all of these legends cards you couldn't get your hands on for, white border. I'm sure you've seen White Border Blood Moons. It was in that set.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the value of a lot of stuff tanked, and people were less interested in playing the game because they're like, look, this is an expensive game. If you guys are going to do this crap to the value of my collection, then I'm not going to keep playing.
Mhm.
So to restore consumer confidence, they created the reserve list. And the reserve list is we're not going to reprint these certain cards. If they're on the list, they're not going to get reprinted. They didn't really elaborate, right? It was just that's what they said. That was
Left
like
it
the
vague.
in writing
Yeah.
statement. And after that, there were several announcements that they made because they did reprint some of the cards and special treatments in these like specialty decks. They did not that long, like 10 or 20 years ago, but well after the reserve list was created.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they saw that the outlash from the outrage from the community was pretty severe, so they ended up amending their statement that we're not going to even print them in like non-tournament playable ways. But I can't remember if it was contemporaneous with the original reserve list or later in time that they made the informal announcement that they would not reprint functional duplicates.
Functional duplicates. Okay.
Right? So if you called something like Washington and it was a green black land that you could fetch as a green or black forest or a swamp, and it came into play untapped, that's a functional duplicate of Bayou.
Gotcha.
Right? It might have a different name, which is what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but it's a different card.
Hmm.
And so I'm guessing that in their original intentions, they would not do that. But current Wizards is not their original intentions.
Yeah.
They had explicitly stated through official channels before that they would not reprint non-tournament playables. But now they're ignoring that previous statement and reprinted as non-tournament right? Like, so that's what the most recent set was. So that violated their opposive unofficial statement, even though it was from an official source through official channels that had said that they weren't going to make those reprints. So it's tough, right? Like, I think current Wizards might do that if they need to bolster their sales. If they're not able to come up with other ways, they may end up doing that. But I don't even know if that would damage the value of the originals, because wouldn't you run 2 Bayous?
Yeah, if it wasn't the same name, it just gives you another fetchable dual color. It's tough. Yeah, I am on the team that I don't have a lot of faith that they wouldn't do it, just because I think it would sell like candy. It would sell like hotcakes off the shelf.
As long as they didn't price it at $250 a pack.
Well, no, especially if they did it like in a very strategic way. Like if they put it in a commander deck, or if they put it in a specialty product that you could get like on a special sale. It would sell really well. So I don't foresee them keeping their word, so to speak. You know.
There has to be a changing at the guard at WotC/Hasbro, I think, for me to feel confident that they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's it for us for this week. Thanks for listening to Cooking with Cardboard. I'm Martin.
And I'm Ben. You can find us on Twitter at cardboard_cooks.
Or at golem_MTG, and our YouTube is Cooking with Cardboard. You guys have a great week and a great holiday season.
See ya.